Building on the insights of his best-selling book, 52 Weeks with Jesus, Dr. James Merritt has written a brand new devotional to bring renewal to all who want more of Jesus. A great companion devotional, or perfect on its own. Spend time with the one who changed everything. Get your copy of 52 Weeks with Jesus devotional from Touching Lives for $13, or get both books for just $20. Call 800-413-1131 or go to touchinglives.org.
Today on Touching Lives.
When you finally take that step of faith and you walk across the line and you say, Lord, today I'm giving you everything I have and everything I am. I'm signing over the title deed to everything. My little lunches, my big lunches. My little things, my big things, I'm giving them all to you. Here's what you'll find out. Jesus is not only all you need. Jesus is more than you need.
Teaching people everywhere who Jesus is and why they need him. This is Touching Lives with James Merritt.
If you're a guest of ours this morning, we're in a series that we're calling Supernatural. And let me tell you what this series is about. According to the New Testament, Jesus is the Son of God. He is the Savior of the world. He was crucified for the sins of humanity. He was raised from the dead, and He provides salvation for everybody who surrenders to His Lordship. Now, that's a pretty bold claim, right? Nobody's ever made all those claims. Nobody except Jesus has ever come to this planet and said, I'm God in the flesh, I'm the Son of God, I lived a perfect life, I've died for everybody's sin, I've come back from the dead, I am the Lord of the universe. That's a pretty bold claim. And in this day and age, there's a big question that comes with that claim, and that is, how do you make the case this is true? How do you make the case out there to the skeptic and to the cynic or to the agnostic, hey, Jesus really was who He said He was, He really did what He said He did, and you need to trust Him and you need to accept Him? Well, one place to start would be the miracles. Today, we're going to look at one of the more famous miracles that Jesus performed, because what Jesus did in this miracle is what Jesus wants to do in your life. What Jesus did then, Jesus wants to do now. Now, I'm going to make a statement. I told the 9:15 crowd, I'm going to make a statement that a lot of you are going to shake your head, roll your eyes, and say, I'm not buying what you're selling. Because you're going to sit there and you're going to say, wait a minute, you can't say that about me. You don't know me. You don't know what I have. You don't know what I own. You don't know how much money's in my bank account. You don't know how many gifts I have, how many talents I have, how many abilities I have. You don't know what's in my 401k. You don't know what kind of car I drive, what kind of clothes I wear. You don't know anything about me. You are exactly right, but I'm going to stand by what I'm about to tell you. Everyone in this room has something that Jesus can do miraculous things with. Everybody in this room has something that Jesus can do miraculous things with. So here's the principle of the leftovers. Real easy. God adds to what He subtracts from me so He can multiply it and divide it for maximum blessing. That's the principle of the leftovers. God adds to what He subtracts from me so He can multiply it and divide it for maximum blessing. Now, this is what I want you to take out the door this morning. When you walk out, just remember this one simple thing. When I bless others, I receive the greatest blessing. That's the lesson of the loaves. That's the lesson we're going to find in this miracle. When I bless others, I receive the greatest blessing. Now, I don't know where you are in your life. I'm going to tell you where I am in mine, and this becomes more true of me the older I get. I want everything God's got for me. I don't want most things God's got for me. I don't want, some things. I want everything that God has for me. And one of the things I know from this miracle is God wants me to live a life of leftovers. And how do you do that? 4 things you can write down. Number 1, Jesus will ask us for something that we have. We'll just get it out right now. Jesus will ask us for something that He have. Now, let me just see how I had one guy that got this right at 9:15. Of all the miracles that Jesus performed, of all of them, this may be the most special miracle of all. Can anybody guess why that is? Anybody want to guess? Nope. Okay. Well, only one guy got it, and I think he cheated. This is the only miracle that's found in all 4 Gospels. Evidently, this miracle was so special. This miracle had such a message that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all said, I got to put this in my gospel. Now, no, except for the resurrection, no other miracle, not even the virgin birth, not all 4 miracles made the list. This is the only miracle that Jesus performed that is found in all 4 Gospels. And it's a very unique miracle. For example, this is the only time that we know of that Jesus ever asked anybody's advice for anything. Only time. He never asked on any other occasion. He never said, what do you think we ought to do? Of all the miracles that Jesus performed, this one was witnessed by more people than any other miracle that Jesus performed. And I have to tell you, I wish I could have seen every miracle that Jesus performed, but if I could only see 2 or 3, this would make my top 3. I would have loved to have seen this miracle. Let's pick up the story, John chapter 6, verse 1. After this, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. And a large crowd was following him. That's important. We'll come back to that because they saw the signs. John uses the word signs to refer to miracles. They saw the signs that he was doing on the sick. In other words, people began to see Jesus do these miracles, and they wanted to see more miracles, so this crowd's building, and they're following Jesus. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. Now if you go to Matthew tells us the time this miracle took place was about 6 o'clock in the evening. So you kind of have to kind of get, the setting here. They're way out in the country. By the way, it's still way out in the country. They're way out in the country, 6 o'clock in the evening. No Kroger's, no Publix, no Burger Kings, no Super Walmarts. No, there weren't even Super Walmarts back then. The sun's setting, evening is coming, stomachs are growling, and now the story starts to get interesting. Verse 5. Lifting up his eyes then and seeing that a large crowd was coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat? So biblical scholars estimate that if you throw in the women and the teenagers and the children and the babies, scholars estimate conservatively there were probably about 25,000 people in this crowd. You read this and you say, well, I know what the problem was. The problem was a lack of food. That wasn't the problem. I think if Jesus can walk on water and raise the dead, I think he can feed 25,000 people without breaking a sweat. The problem was not a lack of food. The problem was a lack of faith. So, Philip, where are we going to buy this food? So, just get ready. Jesus will ask you for something that you have. Step 2. We should give Jesus what he asked. He asked you for something, give it to him. Now, let me tell you what Philip did. Comes through like a champion, does the same thing we've all done in our lives, and we're all guilty of this, right? Philip did what we so often do when we really know God is asking us for something that we don't think we can do. We'll start coming up with all kinds of reasons to God why we can't do it. So look what Philip does down in verse 7. Philip answered him, Lord, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to get a little. How many times in this room have we figured out a reason why we can't give God something he asked for? Tithe? I can't tithe. I can't afford to pay my bills. Go on a mission trip. I can't go on a mission trip. I got a wife and kids to look after. I might get eaten by a giant mosquito. I can't go on a mission trip. Share my story with someone? I don't know how to share my story. I might mess it up. They may ask me a question that I don't know, and I'm too shy. And we all do that. And see, I'm convinced that Jesus' heart was just shattered because what bothered Jesus was not the lack of food, it was the lack of faith. Listen to this. A lack of food can't stop God. A lack of faith can shut God down. Just think about what Philip had already seen Jesus do. He had already seen Jesus turn water into wine. He had already seen Jesus heal a sick man's son. He had already seen Jesus give a paralytic man the ability to walk. He had already seen Jesus raise people from the dead, and he still doesn't get it. He's still using his calculator, pinching pennies, counting nickels, because he didn't get it. Philip, you are never the source of what I ask you to give. I'm the source for what I ask you to give. You're not the bakery. I'm the baker. You're just the waiter. Anything I ask you for, I'll provide for you. Just tell me that you will give it to me. Well, Philip flunks the test. Triple F. He flunks the test. And it looks like everything is lost, right? Everything's lost. And then this happens, verse 8. One of his disciples, Andrew, I love Andrew. He's trying to help Philip out. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, there's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But then he adds this little comment, but what are they for so many? So the kid brings his lunch, and he brings just enough to feed himself. He's, okay, I got 5 loaves, I've got 2 fish. Now, you may sit there and say, well, that sounds like a pretty big lunch. You don't understand. 5 loaves and 2 fish were not the meal of a little boy. They were the meal of a poor little boy. Because when we talk about loaves, it's not like the loaf you get at the grocery store. We're not talking about bread this big. The word there for loaf literally means wafer. Okay, like a wafer. Or, here's a modern translation, a silver dollar pancake. Okay, that's about what you're talking about. Just a little wafer about that size. It was flat, it was hard, it was brittle, about the size, you know what I'm talking about, right? Silver dollar pancake. About the size of a silver dollar pancake. Well, you say, yeah, but he had 2 fish. We're not talking about catfish or bass. The word there for fish refers to small fish like sardines. So this boy's got 5 little wafers and 2 little bitty minnows, you might say. And Andrew basically says, here is the good news and here's the bad news. The good news is that boy's got some lunch. The bad news is it couldn't feed an ant. I mean, we still got a problem. But here's what I want you to, don't miss this. What made a little lunch a big lunch is what that kid did with his lunch. Because you know what Jesus can do? He can take a little lunch and turn it into a big lunch. He can turn a little talent and turn it into a big blessing. He can take a little ability and turn it into an unbelievable miracle. And this is where the miracle really starts. Because you know what the most valuable thing was in that crowd at 6 o'clock in the evening? That boy's lunch. Because that was the only food there was. I mean, I want to tell you something. If I had been there and I'd been smart and we were in a building program, I would have auctioned that lunch. That's what I would have done, right? I mean, because that was all there was to eat. And see, here's what I want you to understand. What made that little boy's lunch so valuable was it was available. Jesus, you want my lunch? You can have my lunch. And you know why it was available? I don't know how this kid pulled it off, but somehow this kid got it when the disciples didn't get it. This kid figured out, this is not a request, this is a test. And where the disciples flunked it, flagged it, he gets an A++. And I'll tell you what blows my mind. Every time I read this story, it blows my mind. How can a kid who had never met Jesus in his life have more trust in Jesus than 12 men who had spent 3 years every day with the man? That's what blows my mind. Why is it some of us who have known Jesus years and years and years aren't nearly excited about somebody just get saved? Isn't that strange? Isn't it interesting? So this kid says, you know, Lord, you got some dummies for disciples, but I'll tell you, I believe you. Before we go any further, I want you to kind of think with me just a minute, okay? This is real easy. Did Jesus really need that little boy's lunch to feed that crowd? He need that. Are you kidding me? The man can walk on water, dude. The man can make blind people see and deaf, but you think he needed that kid lunch? He didn't need that kid's lunch. And you say, well, wait a minute. He didn't. He could have looked at every rock on that seashore and said, bread, bread. He could have said to the fish, jump, and fish would have jumped out of the sea right into everybody's lap, right? So the question is, okay, I don't understand. If he didn't need it, why did he ask for it? I want you to hear this. When Jesus asks you for anything, it's not because he needs it. When Jesus asks you for anything, it's because you need to give it so you'll learn to trust him. And we don't get that. You think we pass the basket because God needs your money? I mean, you think God's up there with sunglasses and a hat and a tin cup saying, help me or my church will go broke? He doesn't need your money. You need to give it. So you'll learn to trust him. You'll learn he is the source of all that you have. And watch this. When you do that, the third lesson will happen right before your very eyes. Jesus will use what you give him. He'll ask you for something, you give him what he asked for, then he'll use what you give him. Verse 10, Jesus said, have the people sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, about 5,000 in number. Jesus then took the loaves. When he'd given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, so also the fish, as much as they wanted. Now the disciples are probably thinking, he's lost his mind. This time he's lost it. How are you going to feed 25,000 people with 5 wafers and 2 sardines? How are you going to do that? And then, really thinking he's crazy, what does he do? He gives thanks. Now, I guarantee you those disciples, while he was praying, they're saying, I wonder if he would pray long enough, we can just get out of here. Because it's about to be a disaster here. How in the world is he going to do this? And I don't know what he said, but he probably said something like this. Lord, I just want to thank you for this little boy. I want to thank you for this little lunch. I want to thank you for this large crowd. I want to thank you for the opportunity once again to demonstrate there is nothing impossible for you. There is nothing too difficult for you. So, Lord, I just want to thank you for this blessing. And see, what you're seeing now, watch this, what you're seeing right now, this is how God always operates. He asks for what he wants. We give him what he asks. He uses what we give. And you know what? God loves to use the little things. It's not that God can't use big things, okay? He can, but he loves to use the little things. You know why? Because when God uses the little things, he gets the greatest glory. And when God uses the little things, we show the greatest faith. See, here's where some of you are this morning. You're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, man, I wish I had a son. I don't even have I've got about 1 wafer and a half of fish. I didn't go to college. I drive a truck. I'm shy. I don't know much about the Bible. I can't sing. I don't play a musical instrument. I can't do this, and I can't do that. And what little I do have, it's so small and it's insignificant. I just want to tell you and just remind you, some of the greatest things that God ever did in the Bible, he did it using little things. The greatest warrior that ever went against the people of God, the strongest, largest giant that ever went against God's people, a man by the name of Goliath. And what did God use? A slingshot. Are you kidding? How about a howitzer? How about a Magnum 44? You're using a slingshot. Yep, because that gets me the glory. How about a widow's mite? Hey, I'm going to bring my son into this world. You know what I'm going to use? A poor, illiterate, teenage girl. He uses little things, things that we don't think are important. God says, hey, just give me the faith the size of a mustard seed. We'll go move mountains. God loves little things. Now think about this. This will be worth coming to church for. Do you know what really determines the value of something? What really determines the value of something is whose hands it's in. I'll give you an illustration. Go home this afternoon, get on Amazon, and order a Major League Baseball, a real Major League Baseball, about $12. Next Sunday, bring me the baseball. I'm going to hold that baseball up, all right? And when you put that baseball in my hand, how much is that baseball worth? $12, right? But you take that same baseball and put that in the hands of Mariano Rivera, the relief pitcher for the New York Yankees, you just got a $20 million baseball. What changed the value? Was it the ball? Same ball. It's whose hands that ball is in. Go buy football, NFL football, $45. Bring me the football. You know how much that football's worth? $45. Put it in the hands of Matt Ryan. That's a multi-million-dollar football. Why? It's whose hands it's in. Now I want you to hear this. What made that little boy's lunch so valuable was not how big it was or how small it was what he did with it. And if you don't believe anything else, I hope you'll believe this. The only thing you have in your possession right now that has any value whatsoever is what you give to God. Everything else is worthless. So you hoard on to your money, you hoard on to your possessions, You hoard that house, you hoard that car, you hoard everything you have. You say to God, I'm going to trust you with everything except my money, my stuff, my possessions, my this and my that. You just drained it of all the value that it had. But once you say to God, it's all yours. Take whatever you want, use it any way you want to. Then it becomes valuable. Now, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to see how the principle of the leftovers always work. All right, here we go. Watch this. Jesus asks what he wants. We give him what he asks. He uses what we give. Now watch this. This is the best part. He blesses what he uses. Verse 12. And when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments that nothing may be lost. So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten. Now this just blows me away. That little boy could have very easily said to Jesus, go tell them to go get their own lunch. This is my lunch. All I've got to eat. I don't have anything else. But because that little boy said, it's yours. You want it, Lord, you can have it. Sure. Because he trusted him, Jesus used what he gave him and blessed what he used. Now, there's one thing I don't want you to miss. This is important. Because if you don't do the next thing I tell you, none of this stuff I've already told you works. You've wasted your time. When Jesus said to that little boy, can I have your lunch? He didn't say, I tell you what, I'll give you 2 wafers, I'll keep 3. You get 1 fish, I keep 1 fish. Because you know what Jesus would have said? No, keep it all. Forget it. He gave him all of his lunch. You take all of them. Now, what's the lesson? What's the whole point? If you want to see God do something in your life called the principle of the leftovers, if you want God to add what he subtracts from you and multiply it and divide it so it can be a blessing and also you'll have blessings left over, you've got to give him everything. Everything. Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't know about you. I'm going to tell you about me. Maybe you're different from me. The older I get, the more I want everything God has for me. I don't want most things God has for me. I don't want a lot of things God has for me. I want everything God has for me. I want every blessing. I want every experience. I don't care what it is, good, bad, ugly, small. It doesn't matter to me. I want everything God has for me. And you want to know what it's like to benefit from the principle of the leftovers? You say, yeah, Pastor, I really do. I want to experience what that little boy did. Okay, quit hiding your lunch. Quit hoarding your lunch. Quit holding your lunch. Because the only thing, if I've learned anything in my 60 years of living, the only thing that gives life meaning and the only thing that gives life value and the only thing that gives life purpose is what you give to Jesus. Everything else is nothing. Everything else is meaningless. Every single thing. That's why this message is so important. That's why you can do this. And listen, think about this. How many men were there on that hillside that day? 5,000. Can you name one of those men? Can you name even one of them? No. And here we are 2,000 years later, and here we're talking about a little boy. Why are we still talking about that little boy? He gave the lunch. So let me ask you a question. Who really got blessed that day? You tell me. Was it the crowd? Not really, because as soon as they got through eating in 4 hours, they're hungry again. Was it the disciples? No, Philip's still over there on the calculator going, this can't be happening. Well, who got that blessing? Was that little boy. That boy didn't go away hungry. That boy wound up with more to eat by giving Jesus everything he had, that if he would eat it all by himself. You say, Pastor, how do you explain that? It's the principle of the leftovers. This is the way it works. He asks for what he wants. You give him what he asks for. He uses what you give him, and he blesses what he uses. Now, wrap this all up. Last question. Why do you think this miracle's in the Bible? Just a cool story. Why do you think all 4 gospel writers put this in their book? And oh, by the way, why do you think we are clearly told there were 12 baskets left over? Here's why. When you finally take that step of faith and you walk across the line and you say, Lord, today I'm giving you everything I have and everything I am. I'm signing over the title deed to everything. My little lunches, my big lunches. My little things, my big things, I'm giving them all to you. Here's what you'll find out. Jesus is not only all you need. Jesus is more than you need. So imagine that little boy grows up, has a family, and he's got 2 or 3 little boys, and they're sitting at his feet, and they're old enough now to understand, and he said, guys, I want to tell you a story I've been waiting to tell you for a long time. And he tells the story about Jesus and the magical day when Jesus took his lunch and fed 25,000 people and he had 12 baskets left over. And man, their eyes are big as coconuts. They're listening to this story. And when he gets to the point about the leftovers, all those leftovers, he said, now boys, let me tell you what this always means about Jesus, and don't ever forget it. And I mean, man, they're just sucked in. He said, boys, there's not a problem you have that Jesus can't solve. There's not a hurt you have that Jesus can't heal. There's not a question you have that Jesus can't answer. There's not a problem you have that Jesus cannot solve. There's not a hunger that you have that Jesus cannot meet. There's not a question you have that Jesus cannot answer. So boys, here's what I want you to do when you grow up to be like your daddy. You give Jesus your life. You give Jesus your marriage. You give Jesus your money. You give Jesus your time. You give Jesus your talents. You give Jesus your love. You give Jesus your life. Because boys, here's what you'll find. Not only will so many other people be so blessed by your life, you will get to enjoy the leftovers.
So often, we look at our lives as nothing special. But when you give your life to Jesus, He blesses it, multiplies it, and shares it with those who are lacking. If you find yourself discouraged today, call Touching Lives at 800-413-1131. We want to pray with you as you learn to see your life as Jesus sees it, full of potential.
Building on the insights of his best-selling book, 52 Weeks with Jesus, Dr. James Merritt has written a brand new devotional to bring renewal to all who want more of Jesus. A great companion devotional, or perfect on its own. Spend time with the one who changed everything. Get your copy of 52 Weeks with Jesus devotional from Touching Lives for $13, or get both books for just $20. Call 800-413-1131 or go to touchinglives.org.
If the little boy had kept his lunch of loaves and fishes, he could have fed himself, but everyone else would have gone hungry. Instead, he offered it to Jesus, who turned it into enough to feed everyone with leftovers. Like that little boy, your generosity allows Touching Lives to share the good news of Christ with those who need it most. Thank you.